How's it going, everyone? Back in here for another episode of Between the Ears. I'm Schuyler Callihan. That is Christopher Hall. It is time to turn the page officially from the coal rush and the disappointment that was against Iowa State and move ahead to this week's task against the number 17 Kansas State Wildcats, who come in off a very thrilling win over Colorado. If you didn't watch that game, I'd advise you go on YouTube, look up the highlights. It was a pretty down to the wire, fascinating finish. Kansas State led by 2 scores for it felt like much of the game, and then last thing I saw was Colorado took the lead, and I'm like, oh wow, Kansas State's going to blow this, and no, they got a touchdown with about 2 minutes and some change, I believe, and that ended up being the game winner, and they were able to hold on to win. So interesting matchup. We've talked about it at length. I don't know how many times over the last couple of weeks. Neil Brown against top 25 teams. It has not gone well. 3-16. He has, though, beaten Kansas State twice, and in those two games, K-State was ranked in at least one of the two major polls in both of those matchups. So who knows? Maybe Kansas State coming to town is a little bit of luck. Backs against the wall, you're 3-3. Maybe something changes, and you get off the schneid here against a ranked team at home. So, Chris, let's start with West Virginia's offense and Kansas State's defense. What do you like in this matchup? What do they have to do to be able to get the win on Saturday?
Well, it's going to be tough sledding, but they're going to have to try to find some rushing yards. One of the better rushing defenses not just in the league, but in the country, only allowing 91 yards per game. They were able to get those yards against Iowa State, but obviously we saw the outcome in that. And really, when you look at Kansas State, yes, they've struggled on the road, but that's nothing new, right? Like that's
Yep.
pretty much typical in college football. But turnovers in that loss against BYU was really the huge difference, and that's why they got blown out. They gave up, I think, a fumble return for a touchdown, maybe interception return for a touchdown as well.
And all that
So,
happened within a very small time frame, too. Like,
yeah. So yeah. Okay. Here we go. Cliche. You got to win turnover battle. So it's really this Kansas State team's been good, really outside of that BYU game, and giving up turnovers against Colorado. So they've been turnover prone on the road, and that really goes to West Virginia, right? We've seen them drop interceptions. You know, you go back to that Pitt game when there could have been a 99-yard return for touchdown. It seems like almost every game this season they've dropped an interception. So they're going to have to corral those in, find a way to cause disruption, get Avery Johnson out of rhythm. Don't let him get in the rhythm. He hasn't been dynamic with his legs so far this year, but he's made big plays so far this year. I think he's the only quarterback in the Big 12, one of 11 in the country with 1,100 passing yards, 300 yards rushing. So something they're going to have to try to contain him in some way and get him off balance. Maybe the crowd of Morgantown can get him a little rattled since he has struggled on the road. When you think about BYU, great home atmosphere. Colorado's been great since Deion Sanders has been there. So maybe a rowdy crowd, although it's not probably a rowdy fan base at this point. Who knows what the crowd's going to be? But
they're going to have fun,
maybe that's the
Chris.
key.
They're going to have a lot of
maybe
fun.
maybe that's the key. So um, really, with this group, they're going to have to find something uh, this week to try to throw them off balance offensively. But when you turn around, it's really been the West Virginia offense that really hasn't shown anything has to me hasn't been dynamic outside of Oklahoma State, and that was really in the ground game.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to the Iowa State game, just for the statistical purposes, not to revisit the game, but 87 yards from Garrett Green on the ground, and he was your leading rusher. Jaheim White was 3.8 a carry, CJ Donaldson 1.9 a carry. And I don't know if I talked about it on here last week or if it was the game day show. I know I said it somewhere, but it feels like CJ Donaldson has these like severe highs and lows. There's no real middle in between. It's either he's really running well and he's gaining chunk yardage after contact, or he's getting bottled up at the line of scrimmage and he has nowhere to go and he just can't burst one through the line. And that was kind of what it was last week, even though in a limited opportunities, he only had 9 carries. But I don't know what they have to do to get him really going consistently, but they're going to have to find a way to do it this week. You can't have Garrett Green be your leading rusher again. I'm not saying CJ has to be either, but you need to have that dynamic 1-2 punch with CJ and Jaheim, even against one of the best statistical run defenses in the country, like you said, because if you don't run the ball, I mean, this is your identity. Your best has to beat their best. You can't try to be something that you're not and have Garrett drop back and throw it 35 times a game. As many fans probably saw on the ESPN or the Fox broadcast, every time Garrett has dropped back and thrown 30 plus times this season, two picks. So that's not ideal. You want to be able to control the game, stay within your offense. It has to start in the run game. But I do want to talk just real quickly about the receivers. I know Jaden Bray's ruled out for this week. I don't know what's going on there. He hasn't been very productive at all, even when he has played. I know he's been banged up. But Justin Robinson is another guy that I don't know where he's been. It feels like when West Virginia throws the football, it's to Cole Taylor, it's to Hudson Clement, and every now and then maybe Traylon Ray. They've got to get Justin Robinson involved. This is a big physical dude who's played a lot of college football. He's been productive in the SEC. Get him the freaking football. I mean, especially when you're in the red zone or in got to have it situations. He had a catch last week against Iowa State and didn't hear from him. He had two catches. So you had two catches and never heard from him again. You got to get the ball to him.
Yeah, he's another one that's been banged up and missed time as well. So the two transfers you were kind of relying on in the season have both been hurt throughout the season. So a lot of that's on Garrett Green. To be quite honest, he's missing open receivers. I mean, it's been really noticeable throughout the year. So I don't know, you really with him, you only want maybe two looks and then take off because really
Yeah.
when he stayed in the pocket, he's gotten himself in trouble. And at times, as we saw last week when he's trying to extend plays, he's trying to make a play instead of running. His decision making has not been very, very good this season. We can kind of attribute to it a couple things. And really, to me, he's just overthinking because when they speed up the offense, he does a lot better. It's just like they took the mental part out of it for him. So not really sure what you can do there because we talked about it either I think a couple weeks ago. Like, well, what do you do with up tempo with him? Because you can go three and out and only run 20 seconds off the clock, and then you're putting your defense right back in a bind. And this isn't a team that they lost time of possession last week. Isn't a team you want to lose time of possession too. So really, try to limit that, limit his thinking maybe. But yeah, he has not seen the field very well this season, and his numbers reflect it in the passing game. And then last week there was times where he should have just ran the ball. So it's just like been hit or miss with Garrett as well. But when you go back to the running game, I think, we talked about yesterday, the most concerning part about the press conference to me was the team not doing the little things to win. And it started up front. Iowa State adjusted and the offensive line didn't. And that's something that hasn't been a problem up until this point. Like the offensive line the last couple of years has been good. They at times they've been great. So I think that to me was the biggest concerning thing, and it's something here's cliche too. Leave it out, leave it out on the field. Do all the little things. Traylon Davis got some props because he's been making some big catches. I think the last few weeks he's had a catch for over 20 plus yards, at least 15 plus yards, and Chad Scott praised him for doing the little things. That's why he's been open. He's not the most athletic. He's not the fastest, but he's finding ways to make big plays. So everyone's got to be on the same page. So this isn't a week where they've had to handle success when they've been had their backs against the wall. They have performed. It's like you needed to learn another lesson. So maybe this is a week where they leave it all out there. I don't want to say it's effort because I don't think it's effort. I just think it's a neglect to do little things, and some of it maybe that they're pressing and again thinking too much. But Iowa State up front didn't do anything particular that they hadn't seen. So I think that to me is one of the more concerning problems because they went up against a three-man front and it's something that they practice every day. I mean, West Virginia is essentially a three-man front, so that's nothing that they haven't seen. Kansas State's going to present the same kind of problems, and they're going to do things a little bit differently up front. So maybe that Iowa State was so basic that they struggled. I don't really understand that problem up front, but yeah, offensive line if they can take care of the business, and then we've talked about it before about I didn't see it last week where they were dancing in the backfield, but they've been hitting the holes. But there's been it's easy said than done. Yes, these guys have perfect vision on the field, but when you see an opening, just take it. Or you see it outside, don't try to make that one cut too much in the middle. Just take what you can get because this is a this is a much stingier defense on the ground than we saw last week.
I think you hit on it there with the small things, and sometimes too. Like I think everyone just thinks of the small things as like just communicating or just making the tackle. And that is a lot of what it is. But it's also, I think, guys just, like you said, when they're pressing, they're too worried about making the big play, the splash play, the trying to go for the interception when it's not really the right angle to, or you're diving for a tackle when really you should have just tried to hold the edge or whatever the case may be. And or maybe on offense, maybe it's just you're turning your head upfield ready to make a play before you even catch the ball. Like there's several different examples of that where the big play is in their mind and they're trying to do too much. That's what can be the little things not being honed in on. So
Yeah, and then if you're talking about offensive lineman, you're trying to get to that next level
yeah,
before you finish your block. So there's just a lot of little things, and it could be just hand placement or thinking you have it, that you're going to overpower them, and then
I
it
mean
gets you into
Tomas
something little.
Tomas Remak, I can't remember what part. I think it was the first half. I could be wrong. I mean, he's been solid all year, and there was one play where he just completely either whiffed or I have to go back and watch either whiffed on a guy or just missed his assignment or got beat flat out, and it led to like a 5 yard loss. I think it was on a carry to Jaheim, but you just don't see that type of stuff from this offensive line, especially from the left side with Wyatt and Tomas. So I'm curious to see how they bounce back because this is, like you said, a challenging group up front from Kansas State. And when you play teams that have similar backgrounds defensively, you think you would take a step in week two, but sometimes you don't. And obviously this could just be their kind of a Achilles heel of sorts, in that they just don't play well against this look. And I'm sure Kansas State's going to take some of what Iowa State did last week and apply it to their game plan this week. So. Um, Kansas State's offense, West Virginia defense, obviously DJ Giddens is a problem. But West Virginia the last few weeks, and really for most part of the season, they've done a pretty good job bottling up opposing running backs. Desmond Reed at Pitt didn't really run the ball well for that much yardage. I think he had most of his plays came in the pass game. Kansas, I mean, they ran for 200 some yards, but that's also their bread and butter. And I mean, they play a light box as we talked about, so they were trying to protect the secondary. Oklahoma State held Ollie Gordon to 50 some yards last week against Iowa State's triple headed beast in the backfield. He held them to what was it, 2 point some yards per carry, 2.9 yards a carry. So that's not bad. You can look at it and just say, well, dang, they gave up 129 rushing yards, but that doesn't mean a whole lot when you run the ball 45 times and that's all you got to show for it. So I don't know that. I mean, DJ Giddens is a problem. They're going to have to game plan for him certainly, and it's going to pretty much start and end with him. Well, not end with him, but start with him. But I'm not too worried about how they're going to be able to attack him and try and contain him. To me, it goes back to the pass defense. We've seen it at times be a very big issue. Kansas State's got some playmakers. And obviously with Avery Johnson, the way that he can be a threat with his legs, I think he's more of an accurate quarterback than Garrett on the run. He can improvise much better. I think he throws the ball on the run better than Garrett does. That's an issue. And I just don't know how that secondary is going to hold up, especially when you don't know what you're going to have up front with TJ Jackson. He's a question mark going into this game. And if you can't get a pass rush, I don't know.
Yeah, it's really to me, you have to make Avery Johnson beat you with the arm, which sounds crazy, but they're one of the worst passing teams in the league. So you're going to have
Right.
to. Wow, it's shocking. You're going to have to try to stop the run. And yeah, they've had success in the past, but we've also gone into games, and again, this is everywhere. Where you go into games, you're looking at stats like, oh, who's going to go? Who has the advantage? Well, they're not. If they just stop the run, then they're good. And you watch the quarterback go all of a sudden have a season high 300 yards or something crazy. So yeah, it's more than just trying to stop the run, but you're going to have to contain Avery Johnson. When you kind of look at yeah, Holstein ended up eating up West Virginia, but a lot of that was scramble. So they have been able to do it. But Avery Johnson's one of those guys that he's been able to, just tuck the ball and go. So there's got to be a spot, and I think they've done a much better job, albeit it hasn't been great. But if you kind of look back to the Penn State game with Drew Allar, like he's not. He doesn't have the best speed, but he was running for like 15 yards, getting 15 plus yards at a clip when he was
Yeah.
scrambling. So having a spy, and I think somebody like like Josiah Trotter has gotten a lot better in it within this that second line of defense. So yes, they're capable, but I think you got to get them in second long, third and long situations and put all the pressure on Avery Johnson because he has struggled on the road. I think he's thrown an interception, if I'm not mistaken, the last three games, three consecutive games. So if you can get him in his head early and make them force him to make throws throughout the game. Yes, he's going to make plays, but he hasn't been that consistent. And this is just a young quarterback. So this could be a really big breakout game for him. But West Virginia could kind of pin their ears back, stop the run game, and get after him. And yes, TJ Jackson maybe not being full health in the Saturday is a problem. But kind of look at the guy, Sonny Redwood, has played better. Mulba, Fatoma Mulba,
Really good.
he's been coming along. So this was a unit. When you go back to the preseason, this was a unit I was high on coming into the season. There was a lot of questions in that, and I said, look, this defensive line's a lot better than what people are giving them credit for. And then they've just gotten stronger and stronger and stronger as a unit throughout the season. So yeah, this is going to be
Without Eddie
a
V.
yeah, and this is going to be another really tough test for this unit to keep Avery Johnson in the pocket. And like I said, when you kind of look at the whole up throughout this first half of the season, they've gotten better at containing quarterbacks. They've stayed within their pass rush lanes. So this is probably the biggest test I would say from a quarterback, from a scrambling quarterback, from a guy that can run. This is probably their biggest test, but they're going to have to try to find some pressure and force him to go through his progressions faster and force him to try to get the ball out. And again, it goes back to the secondary. When you have an opportunity to bring down an interception, you have to take it. And you get a pick six. I mean, that's kind of been the the problem with Kansas State. They've given up touchdowns from an offense. They've given up some touchdowns, and if you can kind of get them rattled a little bit, then maybe you have some.
Yeah, last week, I just checked it out. Actually, it's the last 3 weeks, like you said, he has thrown a pick. He threw two against BYU. So he's got 4 picks the last 3 weeks. But last Saturday against Colorado, he was sacked 4 times. He was sacked 3 times in the win over Arizona. So the offensive line's kind of been up and down for them protection wise. So hopefully, if TJ Jackson is able to go, I mean, I think 60% of TJ Jackson might still be able to be good enough for him to get home or at least help others get home. Like you said, Mulba has played well. Hammond Russell at times has played well. Sean Martin had a
And
sack. I really think that group has taken a lot of strides. I'm trying to see what the other point I was going to make. Oh, the mental side of it, as we talked about yesterday, of course. The when you have your backs against the wall, essentially you're 3-3, but you're 2-1 in league play. You can't really afford to lose another game at least anytime soon. You want to get deep into this Big 12 schedule as possible before you hit that second loss. It's probably going to happen at some point, but you got to be able to win at home. And secondly, you got to be able to beat the teams you're going to be competing with to get to Dallas, or you're not going to get there. So Kansas State's obviously one of these teams. And again, you go back to Penn State, Pitt. I would even consider being a big stage. It's a big time rivalry, and the game last week against Iowa State. I think in all 3 games, you could point to different points of the game, and there was a clear lack of focus or miscommunication issue. There was a mishap. There was an opportunity where points could have been had and didn't happen. You go to the Penn State game, they fumble the ball, and then you fumble it right back to them, right? You had a chance right there at the beginning of the game. The Pitt game, I mean, do we need to even talk about that? I mean, you blew a double-digit lead with 3 minutes to go. That should never happen. And last week, of course, the drop in the red zone, missed field goal. 3 plays later, Jalen Noel hits his head on the goalpost. So you can't have those things happen against good football teams. And when I put in the article yesterday of why they keep falling flat in these games is because of that. But Neil Brown has to start winning games against good football teams. I'm not saying that, taking care of business against Oklahoma State isn't impressive because it was. It's a place that West Virginia hasn't had a lot of success at over the years. It's a team that they haven't had a lot of success against over the years. But they're in a down year right now. It's very obvious. but you've got to go and take care of business and get a win at home against a ranked opponent to give yourself a chance, give yourself some optimism moving forward. The mental part of this, I think, is just as big as anything in this game because there's a lot of negativity surrounding this program right now, especially after the press conference Monday. And it's not like these kids lock their phones up in the locker for the whole week. They're going to see this stuff. They got to lock in.
Yeah, and it just goes back to doing all the little things, doing all the things fundamentally that you've done throughout the season, doing the things that you did against Oklahoma State to beat up, to blow out Oklahoma State at their place. Like they are capable, but again, was it because they didn't handle success? You know, you can say that against Penn State. All the hype came out, and they came out flat. And then you go up again at Pitt, you're up 2 scores, couldn't handle it, just fell flat on their face. So it goes back to, can you handle a little bit of success? Like it doesn't have to be just after a win. Like you have a good first quarter, keep it going in the second quarter, keep going in the third quarter. Like you can't just take your foot off the gas pedal. Like I don't know how many more examples these kids, like I understand that, Jaheim White's a sophomore. Greg Green had to be kind of like his he's been thrown a lot at him the last couple of years for a kid that didn't go through the same 7-on-7 as all these other quarterbacks. Like there are situations where it's like you can kind of understand, but this is just Jaheim White is a sophomore year. He played a lot last year. Like CJ Donaldson is in his third year. Like there are guys with playing experience, all especially along the offensive line, that this shouldn't be that big of an issue halfway point of the season. Like
Right.
you have to be locked in. I don't, and it's not just a West Virginia problem. You can go through again. We use Alabama and Vanderbilt as an example from a couple of weeks ago. Like it happens, but how many times does it have to happen to West Virginia? Like the soccer team just got blown out 5-1 after getting the #1 ranking. Like it's not just a football problem. We can go back to when Javon Carter. I think did West Virginia get #2 or #1 in
Number
basketball,
two
and they
lost
got
to Texas Tech.
and immediately lose. Like it is a problem throughout the program, and it's not just a West Virginia problem. But at some point, how many examples do you need to realize you just don't show up? Like you have to do everything that got you to that point and continue to do it and continue to build it. So we'll see. Yeah, it's been a mental hurdle for this group, and they don't have any room for error moving forward. And to me, it's like, okay, if they get Kansas State win, well, what are you going to do against an Arizona team on the road that's been struggling as well? Are you going to just go do the same
Exactly.
thing? Do the same thing. So, yeah, let's see how they look against the backs against wall. When the chips are down, they have been focused and they've come out and played well. But we'll see if they can put together 4 quarters.
You go back to last year, and this was kind of the time of year where a lot of fans were starting to wonder, is this going to be it for Neil Brown last year? Because they lose to Houston on the Hail Mary, then they lose to Oklahoma State, and again, another one of those games where they probably should have won, and some things happened that probably should never happen, like running into your own punt returner, and then allowing a running back to run for 800 yards in one quarter against you, and you lose that game. They're 4-3, and they were 2-2 in Big 12 play. They're kind of in that same sort of scenario right now, where they're at 500 right now. But you win this game, you're 3-1 in Big 12 play. It's a tough game next week against Arizona, but the schedule's kind of lighter, and you have a chance to get a little bit on a run here. You get a win this week, no one knows what can happen. You can very well be in the mix late in the season to go to Dallas, but if you lose, you're pretty much done. I wouldn't say done for, because this league is just going to continue to beat up on each other, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a two-loss team get into the Big 12 title. But you're not probably going to get there with two head-to-head losses against two teams also trying to get there. So the last thing I wanted to ask you before we get out of here, 3-3, obviously, 3 wins against teams that really aren't that good, but 3 losses against teams that have been proven to be really good. So is this a matter of West Virginia just not being good against the better teams, or is this a team that's just they are what they are? They're going to beat the teams that that are less than or that are inferior, and they're going to lose to the ones that are superior to them.
I think the back half of the season will tell us. Right, like it
Yeah.
seems to be one extreme or the other. And really, if West Virginia, if it wasn't for bad luck, they wouldn't have any luck at all. And you can go down through history on that one. They just, whether it's timely, like you can go the Pitt game. They call an offensive holding on Wyatt Malum and a touchdown gets called
Takes a
back.
touchdown. Yep.
Like it's just the weirdest timing of penalties. Some bad hops. You mentioned the running into the own punter. Like that was a bad punt, and he ran right into. Like it's the dumbest things, and it's like, what are you supposed to do at this point? Like Neil
When does
Brown didn't
water
do
find
it.
its level?
Like Neil Brown didn't do that. Special teams coach didn't do it. A cheap punt ended up getting at a favor. And in that same Oklahoma State game, when you go back, Cole Taylor had a fumble. The kid made a good play, absolutely came, knocked the ball out, then
Hail
bounced right
Mary.
back, and bounced right back into the kid's hands that knocked it out. Like he punched it out,
Yeah.
went straight to the ground, went right into his hands. Like that's just a bad bounce. Now you create your own luck, and Neil Brown talked about that. Like you have opportunities to overcome that, but it just seems like West Virginia always has to overcome stupid things like that. And when they don't, they end up winning. But you have to create your own luck in these situations. And doing all the little things will get you over those little, like take care of the ball and that bad hop doesn't happen. A little more communication in
Yeah.
that punt, like whether he couldn't hear him. Like obviously you're on the field. I don't think people realize how loud it is on that field. Like your
Yeah.
ears are ringing when you're down there. So yeah, you're just going to have better communication, better heads up, and I don't know what else to say because I've seen them coach these things multiple times, and you're just like, what were you thinking on that play? So it's really just stop. It's the self inflictions that are the killer, and you can talk about Nicole Taylor getting pushed in the back, but it also wasn't a great pass. Like that's not him trying to toss it up to Cole Taylor on that second interception. That's not what you want. That wasn't the read that you should have had. So it's head scratching at times, but at the same time, it's like, what were you thinking in the moment? And maybe it goes back to trying to make a play, and that's what gets them in trouble.
These Big 12 teams are already talented and they already present enough challenges. You don't need to create more on your own. I mean, if you do, then you're putting yourself at a disadvantage, and that's seemingly what has happened every single time they've lined up against somebody that has a little number next to their name. And I don't know if it's just pressure, if it's just a lack of focus, if it's timidness. I really don't know. It feels like this team needs like to go and sit in a room and kind of have like this convention of sorts. Like we need to figure out the issue because every single time they go out there, it's the same story time and time and time and time again. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know that Neil Brown knows. I don't know that the players know, but they'll have an opportunity to change that on Saturday against Kansas State. So that'll do it for us here today on Between the Ears. Make sure you hit that subscribe button here on our YouTube page at West Virginia on SI. Give us a follow on X at SI_WVU. And we will be back here tomorrow to break down West Virginia and Kansas State on the Walkthrough Game Day Show with Eugene Napoleon. Until then, take care.